ladies and gentlemen, Oakley Hall.
My hero, whose name is Peyton Daltrey in this book, is unhappy with anybody who's abusing other people. Any kind of power over powerlessness offends him. And he went to San Diego High, and there he was part of what was called the Tutti Frutti backfield, because there was people of different races in it. He was on it, and there was a Japanese quarterback and a Portuguese guy. It was called the Tutti Frutti backfield. Now, the Japanese guy, who was a friend of his, is now in Manzanar, and he's taking his girlfriend. They're going up to see the friend in Manzanar. That's the section I'm going to read. Aunt Rhoda, her mother's sister, was Bonnie's favorite relative. Bonnie's his girlfriend. I heard all about her on the drive to Los Angeles. She'd been married to Uncle Doug, who had run off with a young woman whom Bonnie described as a floozy. Mrs. Farr seemed to have a good deal of money. She lived in a mansion on a Pasadena street of mansions and palm trees. A colored woman in a black and white uniform opened the door when we arrived about 10 o'clock and embraced Bonnie with a yelp of welcome. Mrs. Farr looked like Bonnie's mother, except that she was hefty. She and Bonnie talked excitedly about people I didn't know. Finally, I excused myself as excess baggage, and the maid showed me to my room upstairs. I had a rubber tucked into the pocket of my wallet, and I lay awake in a big bedroom with windows that looked out on the trunks of palm trees, thinking about Bonnie. The furniture looming out of the shadows seemed to have been made for giants. I lay with my eyes jammed open and a grip on the joystick as though I was bringing an airplane in for a landing, praying that Bonnie would come. End of that section. North of Los Angeles, the highway slashed like a ruled line across the desert. Wildflowers were in bloom, glazes of yellow, red, and purple. Bonnie kept exclaiming, "Isn't it beautiful?" And "Oh, they're so lovely." "It would have been lovely if you'd come in to see me last night," I said. "You were sawing wood." She punched me in the side. "Some Casanova. Try me again tonight." "Maybe I will," she said, her lips parting in her solar smile. She laid her head on my shoulder. The wind whipped her hair into tight blonde curls. She had brought her aunt's wicker hamper with a picnic the cook had provided and a thermos of coffee. She sat on her bobby-socked ankles in her gray pleated skirt and sweater and poured coffee for us to share out of the chromium cap of the thermos. Old paint was stretching out in these no-traffic highways, and I kept the speed down to prolong this time with Bonnie. Occasion for some poetry. My vegetable love should grow faster than empires and more slow, and 100 years should go to praise. Thine eyes and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast. She punched me in the ribs again and leaned against me to blow warm breath into air. "And 30,000 for the rest," I said. "Stop that sexy stuff," she said. I kept an eye out for motorcycle cops who were apt to stop you and demand the purpose of your trip when rubber was being conserved. Mountains hulked up on either side, ranges left and right, snow-peaked green slopes, water flashing everywhere. A chilly breeze poured off the mountains, and I stopped to put Old Paint's top up. Bonnie pressed against me when I got back in. The radio station to which we were tuned crackled on and off, finally giving up. The sign said, "Manzanar Relocation Center." I saw tar paper barracks low tar paper barracks extended back up the slope of the foothill. So many of them. Whirls of dust slunk along the rows of buildings, subsiding and building again. 2 soldiers wearing white helmets manned the gate, revolvers and button-down holsters on their hips. They passed us through. Words like relocation center didn't mean much until you'd seen the barracks and the soldiers in their white helmets and the barbed wire. The first of the structures bore the sign reception. 2 cars and 2 pickups were nosed into a barrier of whitewashed rocks. I could see some of the Japanese now, 2 young women walking on either side of an old man with a cane. Then a group of young people, Trailing on with them was a kid who couldn't have been more than 4. A swirl of dust blew across the group, and the child began to run to catch up with the others. 2 of the girls were laughing. In front of the reception center, flowers bloomed in a ring of whitewashed stones. I stopped Old Paint and leaned my forehead against the steering wheel. When I raised my head, Bonnie looked round-eyed, anxious. "It's awful," she said. "It's because you can't tell the bad ones from the good ones." "It's just the war," Bonnie said, as though I needed to be comforted. "It's the LA Chamber of Commerce," I said, "and some stupid general, and Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the order." Bonnie accompanied me inside the reception center, keeping close beside me. A balding sergeant sat at a desk with a phone. 3 other Caucasian civilians occupied straight chairs along the wall. The sergeant looked up names on sheets of paper and a clipboard and nodded to us to sit down. He spoke into the phone and said that Mr. Takahashi would be along directly. Bonnie sat with her saddle shoes placed precisely side by side. I had the sensation of having introduced her to a new side of life. Except for reading Crime and Punishment on my recommendation, she had never had any low-life experience. And she whispered, "We're awfully lucky, aren't we?" "We're not really involved," I said. "We can turn around and go out of the gate any time we want to. The only way we're involved is our government's doing this and it's us." Bonnie tucked her chin down as though she'd been reprimanded. Stan sauntered in wearing jeans, a jacket, penny loafers, and sweat socks. I rose to introduce Bonnie. Stan greeted her coolly. "Let's get out of here," he said. "We've got a picnic in the car," Bonnie said. She looked childish in her pleated skirt and bobby socks. She had brushed her hair until it gleamed. "I already ate," Stan said. "I'm on the 11:30 shift. You have to eat with your shift." He led us outside and past 2 of the buildings to a bench braced against a west-facing wall in a band of sun. We sat down together, Bonnie between us with her arms wrapped around her knees. "What do you do all day?" I asked. "What you do in the pen?" Stan said. "Eat, sleep, daub around, have meetings." Brushing his fingers through his hair, he said, "I appreciate you were coming, Pate, Bonnie." He had seemed no different from anyone else at San Diego High, but now he was inexplicably foreign, shorter than I'd remembered. And it was as though the scallops of flesh at the corner of his eyes had become more prominent. I took a deep breath. I said, "How is it?" Stan considered. "It's really hard on the old people. They've lost everything, most of them. It's tough seeing your parents really broken down." "Peyton says you were pre-med at UCLA," Bonnie said. "My brother was pre-med at Stanford." "What do you mean was?" "Well, he's in the Coast Guard now." "He's in for the duration too," Stan said. I was feeling an ache of discomfort in my shoulders, trying to keep the conversation going. "The trouble is we keep telling each other how rotten it is," Stan said. "We have meetings a couple times a week to tell each other it's unconstitutional. The trouble is you're PO'd all the time. It's all you think about." He sat with his feet stretched out, hands in his pockets. "The people in charge aren't so bad," he went on. "Caucasians, we call them." He gave Bonnie an apologetic glance. "They didn't do this to us. The Army did, and the President did. General DeWitt said the Jap is a Jap, and it doesn't matter whether he's American or not." He made a snarling sound. Bonnie asked if anyone would do anything. "My brother and some of the lawyers are trying to get something to the Supreme Court, but the government can do about anything it wants to in wartime," he said. "They even knocked out habeas corpus in the Civil War." He leaned stiffly forward, his hands trapped in his pockets. He looked relieved when 2 other fellows happened by. Everybody stood around Bonnie, huddled on the bench. I said it was a beautiful valley. "It wasn't until A Water and Power stole all the water," one of the others said. "Looks like plenty of water coming off the mountains. Headed for LA toilets." But the 2 others moved on. Bonnie hugged her knees. "You still going to be a writer?" Stan wanted to know. "You ought to write about this place." He swung his arm. "Except I guess you couldn't do it unless you'd really been inside."